Welcome back, Venus Warriors. Thanks for coming to this Friday episode, which on Fridays I interview women that I feel have found their Venus Warrior and they've brought them out, changing what they were doing in their life or building a business or completely changing everything just because they found a passion or their purpose and they just weren't living it before and now they're going for it. So today I have the pleasure of having Radiance on. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thank you. So for our listeners to know that I met you actually through one of our coaching groups, and you are doing some pretty impressive stuff. And we connected quickly because we both have a science background, which a lot of people know about me, but they don't know about you yet. But tell us like what it is that your vision is of what's going on in your life, of what you're trying to build right now with your vision of this business.
So Meals with Radiance, MEALS is an acronym. So MEALS actually stands for Make Eating About Living Synergistic. And when I say synergy, a lot of people actually don't know what that means. How can you make eating about living synergistic, right? That's just huge. So what I have tried to do with my company is start building in levels, as far as how food and science correlate. It's such a big topic, and to hit them all at once with all these terms can be a little bit intimidating. Mm-hmm. So right now, my focus is on making people understand how food is medicinal and how you can actually treat your body with food and have your overall health be improved and have certain foods that actually contribute to your overall health. I just want people to have an understanding of what that is first with my company, and then to live in a lifestyle where what you're eating and how you're living correlate with optimal health and well-being.
Yep. Yeah. And I see this becoming, I hate to say more and more popular because it's sad for me because, as we have a science background. And so I hate to say popular because this is how it was done centuries ago, right? We would eat foods and we would have herbs and be able to treat yourself, right, by what you're ingesting. And and here's a great question for you, because I had some pretty bad, I don't want to say intestinal, but they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. So I went to the hospital and all of this stuff, right? And their focus was automatically like finding a medicine, right? Or a pill or something just to give me. And I even asked them, I was like, well, what about diet? Can we talk about like food? And they're like, oh no, you'll be fine. Just don't eat for 24 hours. And I'm like, well, what is that? Right? So then I got to this point of where I think people have become completely detached from understanding what you're eating is what is making you, right? Like that's what's feeding this body. So what do you think about that? Do you think people are completely like oblivious to it now, or what?
I actually do think people just don't quite understand how important what you put in your body is. I mean, we say all the time, what's that common saying?
You are what
you are what you eat, right? Mm-hmm. And it's funny to say that because a lot of times you think, okay, well, if you eat junk, you're going to be overweight. That's how we associate it. But we're not also thinking about how you are what you eat affects your health and overall well-being. What about the diseases that come with the certain foods that we eat? What about how that piece of fried chicken, what about the oils and how those are affecting your overall health? We're just thinking about, it's going to make you overweight. That's all we think about in society. But we're not thinking about how that's affecting heart disease, how that's affecting intestinal issues like you had, that's how all of those things tie together. So we're not trained to think about that, and I think that we need to go back to understanding why doctors look to natural herbs for medicines in the first place. They look to those first, and then pills came after plants. So we always had plants first, but we have moved away from that in society, and we need to go back to our roots. So I do think that it is that currently we are oblivious, but I think that we're making some strides. I'm noticing that we have veganism is spreading. People are thinking about paleo. People are thinking about all these different ways of eating. So we're becoming more knowledgeable with Google, with, knowledge being so much at our fingertips now. But it is a long road until we are more on the same level of that, understanding of what food is doing to our overall health. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So then, okay, so how did you even come up with this idea? Like what, we talked before and you have a background in science. You were pretty much cutting edge stuff that we were talking about what we're doing now in the science world. But so why this? Like what happened?
What happened for me was, I think I came back to circling around why I want, like who I am. I kind of had this moment in my life where, I hit rock bottom. I was thinking, where's my life going? What am I wanting? What do I want to do? I go to work and I take care of my kids and that's my life. And at 29, 30 years old, like, why is that just my life? There has to be something more. And then, at the time I was, overweight, depressed. Like I said, I was at rock bottom, and I noticed a lot of that had to do with what I was eating. I was borderline obese, according to my BMI. Yeah. I was within 1 percentage point of being considered obese for my, height and weight. At 5'2", 170 pounds, that doesn't really qualify as healthy. So I took the time to truly work on my diet. And I got, there was like a health plan that I purchased, and I noticed that it gave me awesome results. It was one of those companies where you get like, processed foods, and, you eat them 4 or 5 times a day. And then, you learn to eat one meal a day that you make on your own. And it worked for me. It really did. And I'm forever grateful for that. I lost 25 pounds. Like I felt amazing. But when I noticed that I wasn't taking care of my kids with that meal, I was taking care of me. And that kind of frustrated me, because here I am eating these 5 or 6 meals a day that are completely healthy, or, I'm not really having to worry about making food. And my kids are eating junk because my meal habits hadn't changed. I was on a diet plan, but did I change? Was I becoming a better person with food? No, I had a plan that was laid out for me, and that wasn't fair for my kids. I started noticing that, number one, they were eating junk, and number two, we weren't eating at the dinner table. And that really struck me. As a single mom, you want to make sure that you're there, even though you're not always there. You got so many things to do, but at least we can eat at the dinner table. And I was also thinking, wow, I'm being selfish. I'm eating this healthy food and they're eating junk. So I took my time to truly say, Ray, this is not what you're meant to do. You went to school and learned science. You went to culinary school. You know how to cook. Hello. Like, wow. Do what you know how to do. And that's food and science. So I took my time to say, okay, how can I do food and science? This is something I've always wanted to do, but I never knew how to do it. It was just always an idea floating in my head. Like, this is me, but how? So over time, I decided to put a plan together and say, okay, food and science, how do I talk about food and science and make people make it relatable? Like, it's such a hard topic. If you think about it, people, as soon as you put science or math or anything, it's just like, it's out of my reach. It's very intimidating, and I get that. So I first said, okay, first you got to hit them with the kids, because my kids have to get it. They have to get it. And if they get it, then we can eat together. So I decided to look up things, how to make food delicious and healthy so we can eat at the dinner table. And that's where meals came about. And then I decided to learn about how I can build a business. I have no idea how to build a business. Building a business is one of the hardest things you can actually do. And building a plan is even more difficult. You know, I can honestly say I never took the time to truly appreciate how these online gurus are doing it. You know, it's a lot of work, and I applaud them now that I have been on the other side. But either way, you know, it was a little bit of a tangent, but I took the time to put the purpose together and understand what meals is, and I've been growing it since then. I have a meetup group. I have a website now, and it all talks about health and science and how to make living about eating synergistic, how to make those things come together and make your life about a purpose through food.
Yeah.
I hope that made sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I love it. A few things. Well, one I love especially is about your kids, because I'm the same way with my kids, right? And I noticed that I had to reword things that I was saying, right? Because in the beginning I was saying, well, that's unhealthy, or that's not healthy, and that doesn't really resonate with kids, right? So I was changing the words so they would understand, like you're saying, educating people about like what they're eating can help diseases, or, you know, like you said, a lot of people just think about it's fat, right? Let's be honest. Most people will say, nope, we're eating this because it's going to make us, you know, thin or whatever. But I definitely understand about the kid thing. I changed what I was saying because they were saying unhealthy, but unhealthy didn't mean anything to them. So when you said about like people are thinking about, you know, I don't want to eat that fried chicken, or that fried chicken will make me fat. That's all they're thinking about, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I was trying to teach the kids that I don't want them to think about like healthy, unhealthy. I was trying to teach them about nutritious. So mm-hmm. that way they're getting their brain into, and I think that works great with what you're trying to do. So can you, like, how are you thinking about like educating that point? Because I love how you're saying like it's synergy, because you're right. This is hand in hand. You're putting in this is the machine, and you're putting in the fuel, right?
Right.
So how do you do that?
As far as my kids go, as far as how I can communicate that to them?
Yeah, like actually, well, both. You can start with your kids, because I'm really curious, because a lot of moms are our listeners, and I'm mm-hmm. sure they've had some struggles with their kids about what they eat, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can attest to that. I mean, and sometimes you'll think you'll figure it out, and then all of a sudden you realize that they don't like it anymore. You don't. It's a journey. But as far as my kids go, I've just experimented. Mm-hmm. And you know, what's awesome is that cheese is actually healthy for you if you choose a good one. And kids love cheese. Parmesan cheese actually has probiotic properties. So it's good for your gut, and I'm knowing that it's good for my kids' guts, and it's good for their overall digestion. I'm sorry, I should explain that a little bit. So Parmesan cheese has probiotic properties, and probiotic means that it can help the natural flora, the natural bacteria in your gut. And this is actually very good, because if you have that natural bacteria, the good bacteria, we like to say in the science world, if we have that good bacteria growing, we actually have better digestion and immunity, higher immunity, right? So I'm knowing that, and I'm knowing that they also like Parmesan cheese. So I just use that to my advantage when it comes to vegetables, especially. How do you get your kid to eat asparagus? Put some cheese on it, especially a good Parmesan.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that. Mm-hmm. That's a great idea.
Exactly. And then you don't have to feel as guilty as a mom for putting cheese on it, because you know you're helping them. It's just about measuring, about what's the word I'm looking for? It's about being, you know, in balance. You know, don't put too much of anything, don't put not enough, just make sure it's in balance, and you're getting your kid to eat something green, which is good for their overall health. You know, green things usually scare my kids away. I know broccoli seems to be the only thing collectively I've seen kids like. As far as the vegetables go, put some cheese on it. The only thing I would say is to replace the butter with possibly an olive oil, maybe a more dense olive oil. So there's different levels of olive oil. There's the olive oil that is actually better for frying, and then there's the extra virgin olive oil that is good for salads. So mix that cheese with a little bit of Parmesan. Oh, sorry. Mix the extra virgin olive oil with a little bit of Parmesan, maybe some pepper, and then have that cheesy goodness on the broccoli or asparagus. And you have your kids eating something healthy from the mom's perspective, and then delicious from their perspective. Yeah. So everybody's winning.
Right, because it's still good for you. The Parmesan cheese. See, that's, and I never thought about that idea. See, look at that. And I thought I was pretty savvy. And that's so cool. Like, I love your story because I had the same thing. I was 75 pounds overweight and I lost 75 pounds. But when I did it in the beginning, and it's kind of dumb because like what you're saying, you went to culinary school and you were in science and you weren't putting it together, right? Same here. I was in school, science, research science, and what do I go do? I do like a fad diet, and I lost a lot of weight, but I was not healthy at all, right?
Right.
So I totally connect with you on that too, because I went through the same struggle. And it's like, why didn't we think about putting the two together? I don't know. Because I wanted to be skinny. That's all I wanted.
No, that's all you're thinking about. That's all we think about in the society, being skinny, being what size jeans do you wear? What size dress do you wear? Are we fitting into those size 6s? That's what we're thinking about. But are we thinking about the health aspect? Are we thinking about overall how our eating habits are going to affect us and our kids over time? No, we're not thinking about those things. And that is unfortunately what our society has come to. And we need to go back to thinking about how healthy our food is and how we can still fit into those size 6s. I mean, they can both come together. It's just doing it smart. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So how do you envision, because I remember you saying, like, you say science, you say math, and everyone's like, well, I'm all set with that. Mm-hmm. So how do you envision this coming together of like teaching people about, because like right there, you did the Parmesan thing and I didn't even think of that. And it made sense. Right. So how do you envision helping people that way with the teaching part, like what you're doing now anyways?
You know what? I've tried a couple of things so far, and I have to say each thing has been intimidating to someone in some regard. Yeah. I am heavily science trained, and a lot of times I forget that not everyone understands what I'm talking about. So I need to take a step back and figure out what it is that they want to hear that will make them want to understand the science. I have to make them want to, but it has to be broken down in a way where it can be a little bit more simple. So science is really cool, and that's the nerd in me, but it's also very broad. Like, there's so many different things that you can go into, and I have to just break it down step by step and have people understand that health is an overall process. It's not just an overnight thing. It's a lifestyle. That's why I keep saying living and eating synergistic. Like, it's a lifestyle. So what I want is to gently introduce topics, gently introduce how it would affect people in a way that they can eat right, have it delicious, and still understand that it is good for you scientifically. So yes.
Yeah. I think that when there's the connection of understanding why, mm-hmm. it works a lot. It works because I've helped people too, because right, our experience, we go through something, we heal our wounds, and then we can help other people that have the same wound, right?
Oh, right. Yeah. That's pretty much paying it forward.
Yeah. That's awesome. So yeah, I agree. Putting a why to it so they understand. Because I was the same way. I didn't understand. But then once I understood, like, okay, yeah, I mean, I could have, a chocolate, and I'm not a big chocolate fan. I don't know. All right, let's talk about peanut butter. I love peanut butter. And peanut butter was like my death though, because when I was competing, my husband had to lock the peanut butter because I literally was like just scooping it out of the jar and eating it like tablespoons.
What's your favorite kind of peanut butter?
What's my favorite?
Yeah.
So I really, first, my ultimate favorite is almond butter.
It's so good.
Oh my God. My complete favorite. And I remember I actually posted it in one of my private coaching groups. I had a picture of my almond butter and my apples. And I said, apples, you're just getting in the way of the getting in the way. But my peanut butter favorite, I love the all natural Teddy's crunchy. That's my favorite.
Okay.
My kids aren't big on the crunchy, but they like the all natural. So we're good there. It was very hard to switch my husband because he was having like Skippy, and I found out that it has like confectioner sugar in it. And I'm like, oh my God. I was like, you're done with that. You're not having that anymore.
Right.
But see, these are the things that I'll tell you. And you've probably seen this where people don't know. They just don't know like what's good and what's not. And it's not, I can't say it's really their fault, right? Because we are bombarded, like the food industry is a business. And I really think like, what do you think about that? Because I really see food industry as just a big marketing business.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of the like essentials of life. You have to eat, right? And we're always going to have to eat. We're always going to have to fuel ourselves. So it's never going to go away. But with the food industry specifically, you're right. People just don't know. They grow up eating things. How many Skippy commercials I remember seeing as a kid, and then it stays with you. But you're not getting those commercials about healthy food as much, If we can find a way to have a more marketable almond butter, to a child, then your husband probably would have grown up eating the almond butter versus the Skippy.
Yep.
So it's really about the marketing aspect, but the marketing also comes from the fact Skippy is probably a lot more cost effective than almond butter. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Things that aren't good for you usually come a lot faster than things that are good for you that take time and pruning to develop. That's just the way of the world. Yep. And Skippy does not escape natural order of things. It's easier to make, it's less expensive, and it's more easier to market to 5-6-year-olds versus almond butter. So we need to find a way to make almond butter more attractive than Skippy, but that's only through knowledge, and that's through knowing that confectioner sugar, like you knew, isn't good for you. Where it's through knowing that the unnatural sugars that are often put in processed foods actually have things like aspartame in them, and aspartame is an unnatural sugar that feeds bad bacteria in your gut that ultimately can cause more diseases than natural sugars in almond butter. But people don't know that. They don't know that it's a prolonged process of eating things like Skippy that attributes to diseases later on in life. So we just have to find a way to make people know how much more healthier almond butter is versus Skippy.
Yep.
And at a young age, sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, agreed. And that's why, and I tell my kids, it's like, I said, think about it. I said, now they're young. Like, I got an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. So these poor kids, they're like bombarded with all of my empowerment stuff and all my nutrition stuff. But I tell them, I say, do you see a commercial for asparagus? They're like, no. I said, do you see commercials for vegetables? No, right? And I say, what do you see commercials for? Like these cereals. And so I even did it in the grocery store. I remember because my son, he loves kashi. He does. He loves the kashi cereal. He eats it plain. Like we don't do dairy in our house, but whatever. And he likes to put that in his Greek yogurt, and that's how he eats it. Okay. So my daughter was like, but mommy, all the kids eat all this other kind of cereal. So I took the box and I took the kashi box and I turned them around and I said, this is the stuff they put inside of what the cereal is. And she's like, why is it the whole side of the box? Right. So I'm teaching them like that stuff. Right. But yeah, like you said, you see those commercials. Like that's all we saw on Saturday morning cartoons was commercials for cereal. Like, right. And they all have cartoons on them and that's their mascots. And yeah, so I agree with you 100% about well, you're right. It's not marketable, right? Asparagus and broccoli.
Right. Absolutely. And, I think in all honesty that we need to find the way to reverse that that way of thinking. If you start them young, then they'll grow up doing it, But if you start them with Skippy, they're going to grow up eating Skippy. That's just how it works. So if we can find a way to make broccoli popular, if we can find a way to make asparagus the bee's knees, then kids will want to eat it. And I think that's where we have to go with it, making it more marketable. How? Right now at my house is through putting cheese on it, but we'll just have to start from, the basics and grow from there.
Yeah. I remember one of my mentors, she was pretty brilliant when she said this. She goes, if you teach the mothers, then they will teach their children. Mm-hmm. Right? So just like you're doing, you're educating the parents, and it's going to flow through. It just naturally flows through. Mm-hmm. Because that's what if they're learning, they understand the why, then of course they're going to want to do that for their children. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, so cool. I love this, what you're doing. And I sent you, and I know we talked about how you are going to like maybe feed in there some of the gene stuff, how we should eat for our genes. I love that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I actually did a couple of hours of research the other day looking at how people are currently combating this problem. So what do I mean by eating for your genes? So we've been really blessed to be in a more knowledgeable society where we can even test for our genes in the first place. Mm-hmm. Things like Ancestry.com, 23andMe, they really have broadened our perspective of ourselves. And through a scientific way too, which is great. But what I personally want to do with something like 23andMe or Ancestry.com is understanding how not only our DNA can tie to specific regions of the world, mm-hmm. but also to how we should be eating. And I noticed that there are a couple of companies that do this from a perspective of what your genes tell you to eat. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's absolutely amazing. I feel like for us to even have that ability to say, okay, this gene says that you can't drink a lot of coffee. This gene says that you digest things a certain way. That's phenomenal. But what I personally want to look at is how we are more likely to develop certain cancers, heart disease, certain maybe gut diseases, different ailments, how our genes make us more likely to have those diseases. I don't think we truly understand how to combat disease on a DNA specific level. So going back to that, how can we use food to combat disease on that level of knowing how your genes are telling the story mm-hmm. of your possible disease, outcome based off of your family history. A lot of times when you go to a nutritionist or you'll go to the doctor or you'll go to, whatever healthcare professional, they will say, what is your family history of diseases, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I went to my practitioner, it's been actually about a year, I need to go back, but they always ask, do you have a history of cancer? Who has it, your mother or your father? Those things play into what you will possibly have down the line in your overall health. If you have cancer in your family, then there is a likelihood that you will, but sometimes your genes tell a different story. Depending on which parent you get that possible disease from, depending on how strong that gene is, there's so many different reasons why you may or may not have a disease, but it's once again in your genes, and people need to look at that on a more in-depth level so they can understand, okay, if I eat foods that combat cancer and I have a high likelihood of getting cancer, I can take the necessary steps now to prevent that from being my future. Mm-hmm. And I feel like pharmaceutical companies today are more geared toward treating a disease instead of treating the cause.
Yes.
Why don't we treat the cause before the outcome?
Mm-hmm.
Why do we have to wait until it happens to treat it? Why don't you take the steps to prevent it first?
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that that's what we need to do, and through food.
Yep. 100%. I remember one of my favorite professors in college, he told me, because I was really passionate about this too, right? Because at one point I'm like, why are we always just looking at like the treatment of the symptoms? It's like this Band-Aid. Why are we always looking for the Band-Aid? Why aren't we going even back further, right? Because that's our scientific mind, right? Like at least mine, right? We would research, like, where is it starting? Why is it starting? Let's do that. And he told me, he said, Liz, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And I'm like, oof, yeah. Because it's true, right? Right? So
That's
imagine,
so powerful.
like, imagine, a good friend of mine, she's totally into this too. I'll have to connect you guys. She's also a molecular biologist like me, and she totally helped her dad, who was type 2 diabetic, right? All of these insulin shots and this and meds. And she's like, no, this is ridiculous, because this is food. This is your entire diet, because it's not type 1, it was type 2. Right. And she did. She helped him. He changed his entire lifestyle. No more diabetes, right? And it's like, think about it. Just changing the food that you're eating anyways, because you have to eat, like you said, and all of that saved your life, really. So,
right, and all the time and all the energy put into even having to get the insulin shots. Insulin is not, it's not cheap, and then it's not fun to take. So, for prolonged periods of time taking insulin shots, I mean, that doesn't always seem very healthy to me either. It sounds like it could possibly lead to more problems, which sounds like what he was having. So I'm glad that your friend was able to recognize that. Oh, you said she's in scientific background. Okay, so eventually she tapped into her knowledge too and said, okay, I know how to do this on a scientific level with food. And that's amazing. I'm really glad that she was able to help him. And it sounds like he's living and eating Synergistic himself.
Yeah, so this, I can see what you're doing is super powerful, because we need what you're doing. We need it more, I think, because it works. It just works. And I think what you're doing with all of these amazing, like your posts, not only just your posts, but you've been published, all these articles and things that you're doing is amazing. And I think everyone's going to benefit. I think you're right. The knowledge, the education part is massive. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And once we're educated, I feel like it will just start a chain reaction. I mean, people in society, once they know something, they are gung-ho for it. I have noticed, especially millennials, like they are so privileged to be in a knowledge-based society. So once we get to that point and we can start them young, I think over time the world even can truly just benefit from just knowing how to eat and live.
Absolutely. Oh, this is awesome. Cool. So how can people find you online so they can read more about you?
So I recently published my website. It's called mealswithradiance.com, and you will see me. I have a couple of pictures, and I have a couple of food and recipes. My blog is up, and I will be talking about similar things that I've talked to on your show today, as well as you'll see me out and about with my kids. Like it's just me and everything that I represent.
Perfect. Awesome. And for everyone listening, I will have in the show notes, like I always do, so you can click right on it directly and you can get in contact and see Radiance's amazing. You got to see these photos. Those photos that you posted the other day, they're on there, right? Because those were pretty amazing. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this for us and for the listeners. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for being able to talk to me about science, because I missed it. I really miss it sometimes. Just be able to have my science in me come out. So you gave me the opportunity just to be me. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks so much.